Okay, good morning. This is the recommending committee for July 31st, 2023. We are now called to order. And item number 2 is our announcement regarding the compliance with the open meeting law. Ms. Luann.
You are in compliance.
Thank you very much. Item number 3 is for possible action to approve the final minutes by reference to the July 17th, 2023 recommending committee meeting. May I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
And post?
Hold on one second.
Oh, already?
Okay, we don't have the... Jeff Dorkak, Assistant City Attorney for the record. We should have a public comment item before an action item. We don't on this agenda because we usually just have the bills and then we do a public hearing with each bill. So for number 3, does anyone want to come up on the final minutes? Seeing and hearing none, you can do the vote now.
And post? And moving on to item number 4, bill number 2023-17 for possible action amends various provisions of LVMC chapter 14.10 and 14.11 to update water conservation measures to be consistent with regulations of the Las Vegas Valley Water District and makes rules changes to the LVMC Title 19 and amends LVMC chapter 16.28 to prohibit the use of evaporative cooling in new structures. This was sponsored by Councilwoman Olivia Diaz. Mr. Vallada, thank you.
Good morning, Mayor Pro Tem Knudsen and Councilwoman. Bill before you today will adopt a number of water conservation measures into Las Vegas Municipal Code, Titles 14, 16, and 19. With us today is Zane Marshall, Director of Water Resources with Southern Nevada Water Authority. Before I turn things over to Zane, a couple of introductory notes to share given our somewhat unique standing as a municipality and a lot of discussion that's been going on recently about the drought and water in general in Southern Nevada, since we are under a national and international spotlight. We know that the drought has been a major topic for the past 2 decades now, but a few things bear repeating, and you'll hear it again from Zane at a couple points. Waters of the Colorado River are serve 40 million people in the basin and outside of the basin and irrigate about 5.5 million acres for agriculture, and approximately 80% of that water is used for agricultural production of some kind. Historically, under normal conditions from the law of the river, California and Arizona allocated nearly half of the total 15 million acre feet annually, and Nevada receives only about 2% of that total, or 300,000 acre feet. But as Zane will elaborate, and because of the drought and due to recent negotiations with the federal government and the other basin states, our share has been reduced to about 275,000 acre feet, and that can fluctuate up and down based on the elevation of Lake Mead. Diversions from Lake Havasu serve major metro areas like Phoenix, Tucson, San Diego, and LA, as well as the agricultural valleys in Southern California. And then finally, we do have a lot of media reports that have been going on about the elevations of Lake Mead and Lake Powell. We've seen in 2021 and 2022 the elevation and capacity of the lake been declining earlier in the spring as Rocky Mountain snowmelt has flown into the river a little bit earlier than usual. And at this point a year ago, Lake Mead was at about elevation 1,040. This year, the basin did get a little bit of a reprieve with the wet winter, but that snowmelt did translate into releases that increased the elevation of both Lakes Powell and Lake Mead, but we're by no means out of the woods yet. Several months ago, even with that runoff, Lake Mead was at a quarter of its total elevation and a quarter of its capacity, rather. And as of this weekend, Lake Mead is at about a third. So Las Vegas and Southern Nevada as a whole, we've been in that spotlight, as mentioned, and it's been widely circulated in the media that with the drought that's been going on, we have a partner with SNWA that has been negotiating on our behalf for the entire region to get us into a position where we can withstand the drought and anticipate that population growth that is going to continue to occur as projected over the next couple decades. It's important to remember that SNWA is the wholesale water provider, and it's comprised of the Las Vegas Valley Water District and the cities and the cities in southern Nevada, Las Vegas, Henderson, and North Las Vegas, as well as the Clark County Water Reclamation District and the Big Bend District in Laughlin. The Las Vegas Valley Water District itself is a utility, and it serves the city of Las Vegas as well as unincorporated Clark County. The Water District was created by a special act of the legislature back in 1947, and at that time, Las Vegas was served by groundwater, so conditions did change over time, and we did have SNWA form in the early 90s. But with the Water District, it is governed by the Clark County Commission, and they have full purview over rate making and water distribution, engineering, things to that effect, and we do work with them with respect to development applications as they come through. There are other smaller water service utilities. City of North Las Vegas, Henderson, they have their own in-house water utility. City of Las Vegas, we only do the wastewater treatment itself, and that discharges back to Lake Mead. There are other small systems and general improvement districts, and those are smaller, and Las Vegas Valley Water District oversees them on their behalf. From a groundwater standpoint, one other thing just to note is that we do have county islands in which the primary source of water is groundwater, and those are covered through an entirely separate process through the state engineer and relevant chapters of Nevada Revised Statute. When it comes to development, just so you can kind of see the trajectory of where we're going, we've been a partner with the Water District and with the Water Authority since its inception, and we've been in lockstep with them in terms of their water resource planning and as part of their overall goals. So our current target in the 2050 master plan is essentially what they have adopted. We want to ensure that our population, as we continue to grow, is served, and their ultimate goal is to have the amount of water that is used per person per day reduced down through conservation measures to 86 gallons per person per day. And that is with the population growth of several hundred thousand over the next 30 years. We've also, because we are a customer of the Las Vegas Valley Water District, just like our residents and our commercial customers, we do participate in the conservation programs that are offered. We have participated in some of the non-functional turf programs, and we've reduced our water consumption as a municipality substantially by using some of these incentive programs that have been made available either through state law or that SNWA has provided. So on the policy side, this bill will help, again, be in lockstep with all the other jurisdictions, all the other member entities in the Southern Nevada Water Authority's area, and link up with the other municipalities in terms of what will get us to that 86 gallons per person per day from where we are now at 104. We are, as you can see from this chart, which has been displayed at the SNWA board and at the Las Vegas Valley Water District board a number of times, all the municipalities have adopted these conservation measures to make these reductions, and we're in line to do that today with the recommendation to City Council, and the City Council if they choose to go forward with these changes. So with that, I'll turn things over to Zane, and he will go through how these policy changes will work.
Great. Thank you, Marco. Mayor Pro Tem Knudsen and Councilwoman, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to you today, and thank you for our partnership with the City of Las Vegas. It's extremely important for our future success as a community. I'll give a little bit of background, a little more background on our water resources, and then we'll jump into the changes to the code that are proposed. This graph here shows how Las Vegas compares to other cities in the region in terms of precipitation. Our community is the driest metropolitan area in the United States with an average of 4 inches of rain per year. And that leads to our sources of water. 90% of our water comes from the Colorado River and 10% from local groundwater. of the water that we deliver into the community, 40% is used indoors and is returned back to the Colorado River through the treatment plants, like Marco mentioned earlier. 60% is used consumptively or outdoors, and that is the primary focus of our conservation programs, is to minimize those outdoor or consumptive uses so that we can reuse our water as far as we can and extend it further into the future. Marco mentioned that we're under shortage declarations on the Colorado River. The Bureau of Reclamation, under their 2007 guidelines, has reduced our total allocation of 300,000 acre feet by 25,000 acre feet, so to 275. And you can see here in this graphic, those shortage numbers are determined by reservoir elevations on the August 1 24-month projection that the Bureau of Reclamation produces. We may move up to the first tier shortage next year because of the improved conditions, but the long-term projection of the river is that we will likely be in further shortage in future years. And under the current guidelines, our maximum shortage is 30,000 acre feet, but the Bureau of Reclamation could make changes to that in the future, reducing our allocation below 270,000 acre feet. And I'll show you how this compares to our consumptive uses. So this graphic shows from 2002 to 2022 what our consumptive uses have been compared to that total of 30,000 acre foot shortage the Bureau of Reclamation could put us under at an elevation below 1025 in Lake Mead. And you can see in the years 2002 through 2007, we were above that maximum shortage level. And if we were to have hit that, we would have been out of water as a community. But because of our conservation programs over the past 22 years or so, our community has reduced its overall consumption. And today we're at 224,000 acre feet of consumptive use. So we have some freeboard, and it's important on a going forward basis that we maintain that difference between that maximum shortage and our consumptive use to give us some flexibility and resilience against climate change and changes to the river in the future. So this is the summary statistics. So our population since 2002 has increased by 49% as an overall community, but our per capita water use has gone down by 51%, and our Colorado River consumption has gone down by 31%. And this is something we should all celebrate. This is because of the hard work of our elected officials and our staffs across the jurisdictions and our community to achieve these numbers. This is huge, and it's recognized around the world for the work that the things that we've accomplished in terms of conservation. Even recently, we've been successful in continuing to reduce our consumptive use. And this graphic shows, with an increasing number of connections to our water supply system, we have continued to reduce our Colorado River consumptive use from 256,000 acre feet in 2020 to 224,000 acre feet in 2022. So the work that we're doing continues to help us out in reducing those consumptive uses. So we like to think of water scarcity as our natural disaster that we're planning for. So you can imagine cities like San Francisco plan for earthquakes, and Fort Lauderdale plan for hurricanes. Drought and water scarcity is our natural disaster, and we are doing a good job in planning for it, but there is more work that we need to do, and these code changes will get us further along in that planning. So I'll start with the code changes. So Title 14, Chapter 10, Section 30 provides new language that prohibits new man-made lakes and fountains regardless of water source or location. And we'll talk about turf a little bit. So there are two different types of turf that we think of in conservation: existing grass and new grass installations for new development. So to address existing grass, Assembly Bill 356 in 2021 prohibited the use of Colorado River water to irrigate non-functional turf, and it also required the establishment of an advisory committee, which was convened, that developed definitions for functional and non-functional turf. In terms of new grass installations on a going forward basis, new grass is limited to certain areas and sizes to ensure that it's functional. In 2021, this advisory committee established these definitions of functional and non-functional turf. A non-functional turf is essentially ornamental turf. It's turf that is there just for visual purposes, and typically the only person that walks on that turf is the person that's mowing it and taking care of it. Where functional turf is intended for things like playgrounds and for recreational purposes, and I'll get into a little more of that in a second. These are some of the places that non-functional turf or grass exists in our community, including neighborhood entries, streetscapes, medians, roundabouts, and non-residential applications like around commercial buildings. AB 356 and the definition of non-functional turf includes all commercial landscapes. So as you can see here in these applications, there are streetscapes again around parking lots or just for ornamental purposes around business buildings. Non-functional turf also includes grass managed by HOAs that does not provide a recreational benefit for the community. And in this case, multifamily residential communities. It also includes streetscapes, frontage, courtyards, interior areas. And under the definition of functional turf that the advisory committee developed, functional turf is in multifamily residential communities, it's limited to 150 square feet per dwelling unit, with the exception of parking lots and streetscapes like I mentioned before. So this is really intended for places where people would use the turf. As I mentioned, functional turf includes things like playgrounds, so turf that's designated play areas, playgrounds within HOAs or multifamily communities. It also includes amenities like slides and swings and other structures for intended use. In the definition, turf must be located at least 10 feet away from streets and or fenced. Functional turf also includes active programmed recreational areas within HOA-owned or managed properties, public parks, and water parks. In terms of dimensions, it must be 1,500 contiguous square feet or greater, co-located with facilities like I mentioned earlier, trash bins, benches, tables. And again, located greater than 10 feet from streets or interior parking lots. Title 14, Chapter 11, Section 20 includes grass dimensions to ensure that new grass is large enough and installed in areas that are allowed for meaningful recreation. And these dimensions include this contiguous area not less than 30 feet in any dimension, at least 1,500 square feet in total or greater, installed on slopes less than 25%, and again 10 feet away from streets. Title 14, Chapter 11, Section 100 limits spray irrigation. So new installations of spray irrigation are limited only to areas where new grass is permitted. And new grass areas under Title 14, Chapter 11, Section 140 are only allowed in parks, schools, and cemeteries. It's prohibited in all other applications for new turf. This includes the prohibition of grass installed in single-family residential developments constructed after September 1, 2023. Title 14, Chapter 10, Section 190 also prohibits fountains or new fountains and fountains with the exception of fountains at single-family residence, less than 10 square feet, fountains located indoors, and fountains already operating. Title 14, Chapter 10, Section 193 limits the size of new pools in single-family residential homes to 600 feet or less, and the average pool size in the community is 470 square feet. Title 14, Chapter 11, Section 195 prohibits new golf courses in the community. Title 14, Chapter 11, Section 197 prohibits new septic tanks in the community, and this supports the Las Vegas Valley Water District service rule change from December 2020. And Title 16, Chapter 24, Section 20 prohibits development with evaporative cooling after August 31 of 2023, and essentially requires non-evaporative cooling like mechanical cooling or dry cooling. This slide here just shows how all of these measures fit into 8 programs that we have for reducing those consumptive uses in the community, including eliminating non-functional turf in the community, which is consistent with AB 356, the septic tank prohibition, which we're reducing or stopping the flow of municipal water into septic tanks rather than being recycled and returned back to the Colorado River. Again, evaporative cooling, which is the second largest consumptive use in our community, reducing swimming pools or limiting the size of swimming pools to manage evaporation in our community, limiting the installation of new grass to really those specific areas of parks, schools, and cemeteries, stopping the development of new golf courses, which is a large consumptive use within our community. Again, limiting or prohibiting new fountains and water features. And then we also have within the water district punitive water pricing that we put in place this year, which addresses single-family residential users in the top 10% of use. This graphic here shows 14 strategies that we have in our water resource plan that demonstrates how each of them contributes to achieving our goal of achieving 86 gallons per capita per day by 2035. The starting point here is a projected 123 gallons per capita per day, which takes into consideration the effects of climate change and system aging, which increases that GPCD over time by about 11 gallons per capita per day. So we need to take that into consideration. And by achieving this 86 GPCD, we can meet our community's needs over the next 50 years with this plan. And conservation, again, is a major part of meeting those goals and needs. And with that, I'll take any questions. Thank you.
So thank you, Zane. And again, Marco Vallata, for the record, before you, again, we have one amendment. We waited on this ordinance introduction and worked with Councilwoman Diaz on this. But because of the legislative session, we wanted to make sure that if there was any language with respect to Assembly Bill 220, that we captured that in there in consultation with Public Works and the Public Works staff. We have an amendment that's really minor and for the sake of clarity, wanted to put in sections 8 and 12 language that it's with respect to waters of the Colorado River.
Thank you, Marco. Jeff Dorkak, Assistant City Attorney. Marco said it exactly right. What we're doing here, I will read the language that is going to be added with a proposed First Amendment on page 8 of the current draft. Page 8, lines 18 and 19, which is paragraph 14.11.197A. I will read the entire thing and note the addition. Except as otherwise permitted by the General Manager of SNWA, no septic system, and this is the addition, that will use the waters of the Colorado River, that's the end of the new addition, shall be constructed or installed on any single-family residential property on or after September 1, 2023. So again, that's that clarification with respect to the waters of the Colorado River requested by the Public Works Department. And then on page 10 of the current draft, what is section 12, and then it's paragraph H in our Title 19. It will read as follows. Sanitary sewer collection and disposal systems shall be required, installed, and maintained in accordance with city standards. Connection to the public sanitary sewer system shall be required, and this is the addition, if sewer collection and disposal will use the waters of the Colorado River, and that's the end of the new addition. If required improvements are deferred, a public improvements covenant which runs with the land shall be recorded, which ensures future installation of any deferred improvements. So we would ask the recommending committee to consider that proposed First Amendment with those two minor changes mentioning the Colorado River. Thank you.
Thank you. And if there's any questions, we'll be more than happy to answer.
Yes. Thank you, Zane, and compliments to your parents. I love your name. Question about the prohibits new golf course development tier. Was there any consideration of incentivizing the removal of golf courses that we already have? I mean, there's a lot of banter in these hallways about golf existing in the future and what the game might look like and how that might evolve. But, and nitrates, you know as well as I, or probably better than I, about golf courses and their questionable longevity.
So we have a couple of programs that have been active to reduce the consumptive use on golf courses. So they have been under a budget since the early 2000s, and we recently modified that water budget for golf courses from 6.3 acre-feet per irrigated acre to 4 acre-feet per irrigated acre. We've also done water smart landscaping programs with the golfing community to reduce their total volume of turf. And they've participated in those programs since the early 2000s. And more recently, we are incentivizing the replacement of cool season grass with warm season grass to reduce their consumptive uses. To get specifically at your question, I'm not aware of any conversations about completely removing a golf course out of the community, but I think we would be interested in having that conversation if there was some interest in that.
Thank you both for the presentation, and I asked you to be here, so I appreciate, in my ward, I represent Ward 1, there's some pictures that you had that were definitely Ward 1. So my constituents are pretty upset, at least a few of the neighborhoods, which I know you're familiar with. And so I thought it was important today to at least put everything on the record. It also helps me to become better educated as to how I talk to my constituents, because this is a tough issue for a lot of the folks that I represent. We were walking and talking about in the city of Las Vegas, in wards 2 and 4 in particular, it's mostly newer development, and in wards 1, 3, and 5, it's older development. So they're larger lot sizes, they're larger yards, and people have become accustomed to having a large yard with a large pool. And so a couple of my questions as it relates to these older parts of the community. One, if they do have really large pools, because a lot of my folks do have really large pools, how does that get taken into account when they need to repair and replace?
So this change only affects new development, new pools. So your constituents with existing pools, regardless of the size, would not be affected by this code change.
And is that true of septic tanks as well? That's something that comes up with the health district all the time, is they have a broken septic tank or something's leaking, and so they need to replace it. I just wanted to make sure you put that on the record.
I believe that is the case. The AB 220 offers a voluntary program, right, for offsetting the cost or offsetting the cost for replacing existing septic systems with municipal connections. But I'm not exactly sure how repair or replacement of a septic system might be affected by this code. Marco, can you answer that?
Marco Vallata for the record. Again, anything that's a new septic system, I mean, that's the language that we have in there. And I think as was discussed during the legislative session, the end game was to try to get as many of those septic systems off and connected to municipal systems wherever they were in the Las Vegas Valley. But as far as this goes, I mean, we're talking about new septic systems.
And I appreciate throwing that out there, because that could be a bit of a wild card, because the health district also has to work into that NRS language, the regulations. And so I appreciate that. A couple other questions. I just wanted to put on the record that
MPT, you want me to jump in? Or I was just going to jump in on that one. I couldn't tell what Marco mentioned there explicitly. I just wanted to make sure that we were all on the same page. So in the ordinance under 1411.197, subsection B on page 8, in the case of the removal of any existing septic system, which I believe was your question, Councilman Knudsen, whether located on residential or non-residential property, any future use of that property requires connection to the public sanitary sewer system, as well as installation and maintenance in accordance with city standards. So I believe, does that sound like to you a non-septic situation, correct?
If it's cracked or broken, it's not removable.
So the change we're asking about, right?
So to your point, and I think Marco said it ultimately, was if it's a septic system, but they need to repair and replace, it's going to be off septic.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. A couple other questions. I wanted to talk about the enforcement of this. And Mr. Vallada, as this is new for the city, I know other jurisdictions have adopted it, and it's similar to what the Water District has done. How do we incorporate that into our planning processes, and what staff do we have to enforce that? What does that look like?
So with respect to development in general, I mean, we have our 2050 master plan that has essentially established the policy of how we're going to develop over the next 30 years, and water plays a big part of that. Because of some of the other constraints that we have within our valley, such as topography and that we're landlocked, we're looking at a number of other factors that play into it: transportation, housing affordability, moving around, and yes, infrastructure such as water connections. So as far as the development process goes, I mean, the Water District and SNWA will continue to be a partner to that, and with looking at how we grow over the next 30 years, we want to make sure that we have those areas where along major corridors and our regional centers like downtown Las Vegas, Centennial Hills, they're all connected with higher densities, which we have seen with SNWA's and the Water District's data that there's a positive correlation with and a function of density and water consumption. It's more efficient with that with multifamily residential dwelling units in terms of water per unit, gallons per person per day, and it's more efficient with certain, up to a certain building height. Beyond that, I think we've seen in the past that evaporative cooling is in high, in larger buildings, larger structures with greater heights, but with the evaporative cooling provision in this ordinance, other cooling methods would be considered. So, at the very least, higher building size and certainly density will be that function that helps us reduce water and conservation as part of the development process, and that's something that we'll continue to work with them on, and it's all part of our plan going forward, is how we make sure that we have densities that are appropriate throughout our municipality that will serve the people that move here in the years to come.
So if I were to summarize the development process for my constituents who may not, I don't sometimes understand it, but if, like in Ward 1, if we were to have buildings or homes that were taken down and for our infill development, that's probably a lot of what's going to happen in Ward 1 in particular. As new development comes through, they'll go through the planning process, and in that pre-application where someone from the planning department reviews their plans, this is part of our code, just like any other code, and they'll be approved or denied. Is there variance applications there that they could, or is that's what I think people are starting to ask now?
Yeah, Marco Vallada for the record. So with respect to infill and redevelopment in general, I mean, if you see an application that has higher density dwelling units or higher density buildings, those types of uses that are conducive to water efficiency and conservation, those would certainly be in support of the master plan. There isn't anything in municipal code that would require a variance or anything to that effect, but it would certainly be in support of the overall conservation efforts, and that's something that we are looking at with the Water District, and with respect to as new developments get approved, as new infrastructure is required, no matter where it is in the valley, we'll make sure that from their end that there is that infrastructure to support it, whatever that might be.
Thank you. Mr. Floyd.
Mayor Pro Tem Seth Floyd for the record. Yeah, just to add to what Marco discussed, and it's going to depend a little bit on which one of those elements of the ordinance. Zane walked through them individually. Each one may have a slightly different enforcement mechanism. So, for example, no new golf courses. Obviously, they could not get a permit. Some of it's going to be through the building permit process. The evaporative cooling, that's been vetted through NAIOP and the other trade groups. So you would not be able to get a building permit for your building if it used evaporative cooling. Some of the other ones, like the single-family turf requirement, that's not really a review that we do. That would be enforcement, I think, primarily through the Water Authority, where they're going to do that through their service rules. So it kind of depends on which element of these. The non-functional turf as well, if we're, as part of a landscape plan, Marco described the development process, we wouldn't approve those areas as part of the development process. So it kind of depends on which one of those elements of this ordinance is at issue, what the enforcement mechanism might be. We did have that discussion with SNWA a while back about code enforcement's role in that. Certainly for front yard turf, if someone tried to install that, code enforcement could be involved in that. Rear yard turf is going to be a little bit different, and I think that's where the service rules come in. So it may depend on which one, but we have a variety of tools at our disposal to enforce the various pieces of the ordinance.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And then my last question was about future development. That's the most common issue that comes up in every single constituent meeting I have, is why are we proposing or why are we approving new development in Southern Nevada? And Mr. Marshall, do you mind just talking about the Water District's purview or thoughts around new development in our community and how that affects water consumption?
Sure. This is Zane Marshall with SNW for the record. So the Southern Nevada Water Authority, one of its core responsibilities is to do long-range water resource planning. And each year we develop a plan that has a 50-year outlook, and we collaborate with the Center for Business and Economic Research at UNLV and the local regional planning agencies and municipalities to look at what population projections are for our community. And we turn those population projections into demand projections. And then we apply our resource portfolio and conservation achievement to meet those long-term demands. Our goal is to meet the community's needs and to ensure that we're a resilient community into the future. And in terms of development, I think our opinion is it depends on what type of development, right? It's water efficient development, which is what we're trying to get to with these codes and change in service rules and conservation programs. A development that it has a reduced consumptive use that allows us to recycle the majority of our water that we bring into the community. That type of development allows us to continue to grow over the long term. If we grow in a way that's very consumptive, where we continue to use water for ornamental purposes in landscapes and water features, that doesn't give us a long enough freeboard in terms of a difference in that consumptive use, right, or those limitations we have in the river. Again, we're the driest metropolitan area in North America, and we need to be very effective and efficient in the way that we use this limited resource. And so that's what I would say.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Are there any other questions up here? I thought you guys did a great job, so thank you for presenting that. Is there anybody from the public that would like to comment? This is an open hearing. Hearing and seeing none. Do you want to make a motion?
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem, I'd like to make a motion to approve item number 4, bill number 2023-17 with the amendment Mr. Dorkak mentioned.
Wonderful. And this, if approved today, this will go to the August 16th City Council meeting for adoption.
You did it.
And please post. And that passes. Thank you very much, Mr. Valletta. I really appreciate it. Mr. Marshall, thank you for coming down, and I very much appreciate it. With that, we move on to item number 5, which is citizen participation. This portion of the agenda is dedicated to the public who wishes to speak on anything they want, really, if anybody's here. Hearing and seeing none, we will adjourn. Thank you all very much. I appreciate your time.